So when you were here last week, Ali, the remains of Daniel Aruebose had yet to be found. And obviously, people will be aware subsequently the discovery of remains which are believed to be his have been found. And the investigation then starts to move on from that stage. Where are we now and what are the next stages?
Well, I think, Niall, there was just such relief when remains were found on Wednesday. And I believe that the child's mother was Maria, was due to be interviewed on Wednesday by Gardaí again. She's spoken to them now several times, voluntarily, essentially. And she was due to be interviewed again by them. And then they discovered the human remains. And I would expect in the next couple of days, there should be confirmation that they are, in fact, Daniel's remains. That should be coming very soon.
Because, of course, they have to do DNA testing, I suppose, is the primary
That's it,
bit.
exactly, yeah. So
that will take a few days. I mean, the remains obviously have lain there for 3 to 4 years.
I think it's 4 years, yeah. So, I mean, it'll take a while, and they're looking for different things. I suppose the first thing that will come back is confirmation that it is young Daniel. And then the second thing they're trying to establish is how he died, which will be tricky, I think, given it's been 4 years. But if there is something like blunt force trauma to the head, for example, they should be able to establish something like that. But there's no guarantee they're going to be able to say how this young boy died, whether it was naturally, as his parents have maintained, or whether there was something more sinister at play.
And of course, something equivalent would be obviously the remains of Elaine O'Hara, who was killed by Graham Dwyer, murdered by Graham Dwyer, and sure, remains took an extended period to be found. And, you know, because it was only skeletal remains that may have been disturbed by animals, a cause of death could never be established through forensics. So that is something equivalent where that challenge will be there. So obviously now the investigation will focus on the parents and what they have said and where the guards go from here. You know, one could presume that certainly the first priority was to find the body, but that will change now. You've written extensively over the weekend and over the last couple of weeks about his mother, and you had a very interesting piece about how their guards are possibly going to interview somebody in the US.
Yeah, so the focus has really been on the mother and the father to a lesser extent because he's abroad, he's in Brazil, he lives there. So their focus really has been on the mother, and she's been very cooperative. She's spoken to them for, over 20 hours. She talked all about her life, the life of her young son and his death. And she's spoken about her ex, Kieran Duran, the father of the child. So she's really has spoken to them extensively about everything. And they've had a lot to ask her. And they're quite happy with you know, how open, I suppose, she's been about her life. And they've also been speaking to other people. They've spoken to both members of the family of both parents as well. I think they've spoken also to like the foster family who fostered young Daniel for the first kind of 18 months of his life.
Now, you know, the time frame is that Daniel is born. Very shortly after he's born, he goes into voluntary care and is given to a foster family who will raise him effectively from birth until he's 18 months old. And at that point then, he returns to his biological parents. And over the next couple, it's about 2 years later that he dies. In that time, the couple break up, but they remain living together. Is there a time frame exactly for when their relationship ends, even though they remain living together?
Well, I think it must have been about a year. It's at least a year before Daniel disappeared or died, and then was subsequently buried secretly. So that would have been around 2020.
Yeah.
Because Gardaí are working on the belief that he died in July 2021. That's what they've been told. They've been given a couple of different dates by the parents of when the boy died. And I suppose that's been a little bit of a cause for concern for the guards that the mother, I suppose, doesn't know the date that her only child died. I think that kind of strikes people as strange. You think it would be ingrained in your memory forever. So I think they've been able to trace, they've been able to establish, the mother, I think now has been able to establish mid-July 2021.
Now, Daniel's father, Kieran, he's from Inishmore, I believe, isn't it? In the Aran Islands.
Yeah.
And he's now living in Brazil. They had lived in for a time in Portmarnock before before living in Donabate together. And he, on Daniel's birth cert, he's described as a general operative, and she's described as a homemaker. What do we know about when he left the country? Is it shortly after the death of his son?
I don't think it was that soon, actually, Niall, because the guards have been told that I think about a year or maybe a little bit more than a year after Daniel died and was secretly buried by the parents on the wasteland in Donabate, that the two parents went to the scene together of where they had left him and remembered him, essentially. So he was still in Ireland then.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were still living together at that point. But I think he remained living in the house for a short period of time. And look, maybe the enormity of the loss of their son just made it too difficult for them to remain living together, I suppose, possibly. So he did cease living with the mother of the dead child, but he remained in Ireland for at least a year after that.
And now he's moved to Brazil, and he's, in a new relationship. But he's also remained in contact with the guards through all of this, and answered calls and been open with them. Yeah,
I mean, it was said to me he's been relatively cooperative. I think the mother possibly has been more cooperative with Gardaí. But then again, it's certainly easier for her to interact with Gardaí because she lives here.
Yeah,
But yeah, he has spoken to Gardaí. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in your piece on the weekend, you described just two items of the child's life. He died and was buried at 3 or 4 years old. In between that age,
I think it was mid-July. Yeah, mid-July, that he died. Yeah, and he was 3.5. He was 3.5 then. Yeah, because that would make sense. Yeah.
So he's basically 3 years and 7 months, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
So over that period of time, you have kids, you collect so much stuff, don't you? Pictures and loads and loads of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And most people keep some of them. But it was quite poignant, actually, in your piece, where you described that there was only one picture remaining and one single teddy bear of Daniel's life. That was all that remained in his mom's possession.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it? Because most people, if you have children, there's pictures of them all over the house, and then their bedrooms have their toys and all their belongings. But yeah, I was told that very soon after his death, the house was completely cleared out of all of his items. There was no trace of him whatsoever. And I mean, maybe that's understandable. Maybe people don't want a constant reminder like their child had died. So that there could be an element of that. But yeah, I think she kept one photograph, which the Gardaí found hidden and then later released to the public. And then one teddy bear that she kept. And I was told that she, I think still to this day, goes into what would have been his room with the teddy bear, and that's when she wants to kind of remember him and think of him. So that's something I suppose she does, which, is just really tragic.
It is really tragic, and, it's such a tragic story in total. And I suppose that's where we get to now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's calls for a statutory inquiry for a start into how a child can fall off the radar. And obviously then the Garda investigation progresses now into looking at if there's criminal offences. I mean, there's no great mystery to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, disposing of a body, I suppose, that is a criminal offence.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, you do discuss that as well in your piece about what level of criminal offence that is. And you described it as a statutory offence. What does that mean in layman's language?
So essentially, like you say, Niall, it's an offence to not report the death of a child, and it's an offence to secretly bury a child. And both of those things have happened.
Yeah.
It's also an offence to make a fraudulent social welfare claim in terms of, so that's, as we know, that's how this case came to light, that there was a claim for child benefit, a renewal for child benefit, the €140 a month the parents get. So that's also an offence. But none of these things are very serious offences, to be honest, that attach to, a lengthy jail term. And in terms of the fraud issue, I think that's only a crime if it happens, if you receive the money.
Right.
So I'm not sure that they have much on that element, the Gardaí, in terms of potential offence there, but they're still looking into all of it, I believe. But yeah, so the other two, the failure to report the death of a child and secretly burying a child, they're what's called summary offences. So that means that you can't make an arrest unless you have a direction to charge. So that means if they did want to make an arrest of either of the parents in relation to these two matters, that it would have to be to bring them straight to court to charge them, essentially. So they obviously can't do that with Kieran because he's not here, number one. But that will be the case if they do seek criminal charges against the mother. They may not. Like, that's a matter for them and a matter for the GPP. But it wouldn't mean that they could quiz the mother or the father, if he ever comes back, I suppose, about the circumstances of Daniel's death, because it would only be in relation to this specific issue.
Yeah, and of course, I suppose some of that is historical, because young girls, through the course of Irish history, may have concealed pregnancies and hid remains, and and under those circumstances, probably legislators didn't want to see people being put in prison for that offence, and you can understand why. And I suppose, exactly as you said, they are going to continue to investigate the circumstances leading up to his death, but they have a clear narrative from both parents about what they are saying. That doesn't mean the guards will still try and look at it from all angles, let's put it that way.
Definitely, yeah. I think, the priority at the moment, well, thankfully he's been found, and then the priority then is trying to establish cause of death. But we really don't know if that's going to be possible. And then I suppose soon we're going to get to a situation as well where the boy's remains are going to be released, and like, this boy, deserves to have a funeral and be laid to rest appropriately, rather than how he was left. So then we're going to get into who will the boy be released to? Will he be released to his mother?
Yeah.
Will he be released to his foster parents, possibly to be laid to rest? So that'll probably be another thing for the Gardaí to deal with once they finished all the testing of his remains. So
the statutory inquiry that's being called for, that's not going to be looking at the criminal matters, you can presume. But what it will look at is how this happened. And obviously there's echoes, very, very strong echoes of the Kyron Durnan case as well, where another child goes missing and nobody notices. Now, this is going to be a complicated investigation, but we do we need answers, don't we?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, TUSLA have come in for a lot of criticism, as has been kind of widely covered. We were writing on Sunday, my colleague Maeve Sheehan had some information about TUSLA's interactions with the family. And I think they had over 60 interactions with Daniel's parents up until 2020.
So this is presumably when the child goes into voluntary care, and they're continuing to talk to the parents,
yes,
and maybe visit them.
Yes, so the parents made it clear, I think particularly the mother, Maria, that she wanted her son back.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons she's told Gardaí that she gave him up is because they were living in a shared accommodation situation, and she felt like that wasn't a great place to raise her son. So they willingly put him into care, essentially. And then 18 months later, he was returned to them, but they had stayed in contact with him. He was doing overnight visits to their home. And so they were in his life for the first 18 months, but he was physically living with another family, I think in County Louth. And after he was given back, TUSLA did have some contact with the family up until 2020. And there was, I think, unscheduled spot visits to the house and things like that to check how he was getting on. But it didn't continue. It does seem to have come to an end. And people have asked, why that was. I mean, I think there might be issues that both the parents are vulnerable in some way. But I mean, a child is obviously vulnerable as well at that age.
Well, you have to say a child that has been suffers a broken attachment will be particularly vulnerable. And this isn't a matter of, would be Tusla's own beliefs regarding attachments. That the child had been obviously raised by a loving family, a loving foster family for 18 months. And no matter, and this is no reflection on who the child, if the child is moved from that home, it's going to have a significant impact. Any parent who's had a child, they might not remember what those 18 months of their life, but they're
usually formative,
very formative, and that attachment will have been broken one way or another.
That's it, and I mean, it was heartbreaking to read some of what the foster family have said about how much they love Daniel, and some beautiful pictures of him that they had. But Tusla's there, and they've said publicly before, like, their objective is always family reunification, if appropriate. So in Tusla believe that the best outcome, if it's safe, I suppose, if it's appropriate, is to reunite children with their natural parents.
And they do believe that. Now, that is a belief that Tusla hold. I mean, there are different, in different countries, that belief is less strong, I suppose. And of course, they will say that reunification is in the best interest of the child, but the best interest of the child still has to be the priority for any social services. Look, it's a very complicated case, isn't it?
It is. And whether or not we'll have a statutory inquiry, I'm not quite sure. In terms of what it would achieve. I mean, it would be helpful to know exactly what Tusla's interactions were with the parents, and how any reports they might have on how the household was. I mean, from what I've been told, like there was no issues of like addiction or anything like that in the household when he was returned to his parents. It wasn't a chaotic situation for him. So, and they obviously maintain that he died naturally.
Yeah, and of course the child is given into voluntary care. So that gives Tusla, it's a totally different thing than if Tusla had taken a child because of child concern. So they have to work with parents that are if people voluntarily put a child in care, it just is different, I mean, the complex bit of it, I suppose, is as well, like, was the child not dealing with public health nurses? Was there not other arms of the state that should have kicked in as well? I mean, you would think there should have been, but again, we don't know.
Yeah, or like even something maybe as simple, Niall, as when he turned 3, should Tusla have checked if he was registered to a creche? Because you're entitled to free childcare for a few hours each day when your child turns 3.
Yeah.
And he was 3.5 when he died. But should something like that, could that have been checked? Or is that something that they maybe could have been pursuing? Just to make sure that all was well in the household, I suppose,
Yeah, and of course the tragic reality is something did go wrong in this case. I mean, we can't get away from that whatever steps were taken, something has gone tragically wrong. And we do need answers. I mean, the Kyron Durnan case is a year old. And I think it's Dr. Niall Muldoon who said, well, what have we learned? Well, we haven't learned anything because there's been no public report, has there?
No, well, that's it. Yeah, and I believe that the mother in this case, Maria, she's obviously been following the huge coverage that this tragic story has gotten, and she's been essentially Googling the case and reading reports and reading about Kyron Durnan. And I suppose I've been told that she's quite concerned about what will happen to her next, I suppose, as well,
Yeah.
She has a solicitor, Martin O'Donnell, who has been assisting in the interviews with Gardaí. But I think she's been quite stoic in the Garda interviews. But I believe she did break down in tears when she was told they found his body, and that's somewhat unusual for her demeanour generally with the guards.
Yeah.
So she did kind of have a moment then, understandably.
Yeah, because I think the picture of the child really brings it home to people, It just makes a difference. So look, it's very tragic, Ali, and we'll continue to come back to this story and see hopefully some answers will come to the public.
Thanks,
Ali.
Niall. Cheers.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.